So even on this coronavirus, sometimes we use a little catchword. We call it Karuna. Karuna means compassion.
Mm.
So we said that actually that it's giving me and a lot of other people a chance to look deeper into their own spiritual life.
Hello and welcome to the Success Sessions. My name is Jessie Johnson, and I'm really excited about today's episode. I have here with me my beloved husband, Sri Kalachandra, and
Aloha.
he and I are going to share this interview. We are delighted, honored, and so grateful to be able to have this time with Candramauli Swami. Sri Kala, would you like to say a little more about this beautiful man we have together?
Yes, this is the man that gave me my name, and I'm forever grateful for that, and a major catalyst for any of the spiritual understanding and anywhere I am in that on that degree right now. This is the man that I give so much credit to, and I'm so grateful for the work he did with me at the time and the work he continues to do. And it's a blessing because last year, I was with him in Wales. And so it's a blessing that this all just came full circle to happening on this day.
Reunion.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Welcome, Maharaj.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Good to see both of you.
You too. You too.
I'm also delighted to be here. I was looking forward to meeting you both and also speaking something.
Yes. For me, I also am extra grateful both for the influence that you've had on Sri Kala's life, because of course he's had such a huge influence on mine. So you've impacted me in a huge way through him. And also I feel like when we met the first time, we met in India about 2 years, a year and a half ago, I guess. No, it was 2.5 years ago at Govardhan Eco Village, that right. you gave me some just very simple reassurance and support at a time when I really needed that like extra encouragement. And it's the reason that Sri and I are married today. So I'm super honored that we're in the presence of a master, guys. So just relax and receive. There's so much nectar here for you.
Thank you.
Candramauli Swami. Yes, tell us.
My happiness is to make other people happy. If I can do that, then I feel like I've done something worthwhile.
Every day you can feel that. I want to ask you what feels to me like a strange question to ask you, but I'm genuinely really interested in your answer, which is how you understood or defined success when you were a child, and in particular, how you did that in a way that you now know was incorrect or even wrong.
Well, going back to that era is a little hard to understand what I was actually looking for at that time. I guess when you mean child, you mean something like a teenager, would that, or maybe before that?
Oh, either one.
Yeah. You know, when I was growing up and I saw what was happening around with me, and that was back in the 1950s and the early 60s, where there wasn't much technology. Television there's about 3 or 4 stations that were on TV, and not everybody had a car. So things were a lot different than what we have now in today's society. But the push was to go to school, get a good education, and then use that education to get a nice position, some job, and then find a nice wife, have a family, and live happy. But you know, And that was the main thing that I was hearing, and I was seeing everybody around me was pretty much that goal. But I was different. I didn't find any interest in that. I thought that's boring. And I really wanted to just wanted to enjoy life as much as I can by doing a lot of different things.
Hmm.
So I kind of defined success not much by what was going on and the status quo, but the idea is just be able to do whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do and not follow any particular routine. So I engaged myself in various activities, a lot of time in sports. I became interested in political movements when I got a little bit older, and I took an interest in society as in a general sense, saying, well, maybe I can make a difference by getting some position in society where I could help people who were suffering. And then I thought, well, what does that mean? And then I went down that road. I joined some different groups, not spiritual, well, mostly political organization. I got pretty much frustrated in that. I saw that the people who were in it were also in it for their own selfish interests. And then I felt a little bit less inspired. So I moved from one thing to another, always looking for something in life that would really connect me. I was pretty much bored with life.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I was bored. I wasn't a very extroverted person. I was quite introverted. And so when I used to survey things around me, I never felt really satisfied with anything. And my parents were never pushing me hard, but they were very kind to me and let me do what I wanted to most of the time. But there was a push to go to school and get an education. But I was never successful in any kind of, what we say, educational endeavors.
Hmm.
Never did good in schools.
So interesting. I mean, I'm hearing so much. I'm hearing both. It's almost like the threads that still matter to you were seeds even in your childhood, these, wanting to be of service and help and also be free. That's what I like heard a lot of that in there. But also your frustration, because it's like you weren't quite getting what you were looking for.
Yeah. I looked for it mostly in political movements. And then when I got frustrated by my attempt to become part of it and get involved with that, then I started to question everything. And then that sort of led me to inquire into spiritual life. And that just came by way of just as a last resort. It didn't become a main thing, but when I did start inquiring in that area, reading books about reincarnation and yoga and vegetarianism, and I started to connect with that, and I found a great interest. So then I started to read more and more. And then I spent a lot of my time in my youth just reading. I would love to read books. Sometimes I'd have 6 or 7 books going at a time, reading about this, different stories, political stories, spiritual things. I was always like looking, but at the same time trying to enjoy what I was looking for. That makes any sense. That makes sense. I was looking, but trying to enjoy in the search for what I wanted. So, but the enjoyment wasn't coming so much, but I just kept going.
Kept looking.
Just kept looking, yeah.
So it to some extent, what I hear you saying also is that it was a kind of frustration with the lack of satisfaction that you were finding that had you go to spiritual study.
Even in my yearbook, later on in life, I got a copy of my high school yearbook. And I was reading with all my friends were saying what would they wanted to be in the future, what do they want to do in the future. But then I look back at my own statement, and basically my statement was just negative. I'm not finding any happiness in anything. That was my statement. So
Do you feel like it was just like a natural thing that you've always had? Because I feel like with me, it's been like I've always been on this train from day one. I've always been doing something like very similar to your story in the sense of doing a lot of things, doing this, doing that, doing this, kind of outside of the box of my little Brooklyn neighborhood. And it sounds like something similar. So wondering if this was something that felt really like you were just on this trajectory. Yeah.
Yeah, going from one thing to another. You know, I got interested in sports for a while, and I got interested in politics, and then I got interested in, you know, just doing different things and exploring different subject matters, just bouncing. One thing I always felt, now that I remember, I just thought that life was so boring. When I saw the mundane, the day-to-day life of people in general, I said, I don't want to be like that. It looks very boring. There doesn't seem to be any happiness in it.
What changed? Can you tell us about, like, because even when you're talking about reading the spiritual books, I have the sense that there was like a turning point. There was a point when you were like dabbling and exploring, and then you obviously you made a choice at some point to go all in. What happened?
Yeah. Well, at one point I became an atheist. What we call it card carrying atheist. I was actually taking up the philosophy of socialism and communism, and I adopted the principle of atheism. Although my father was quite the opposite. He was such a religious person, so much so that he would go to church every day. We were brought up in Roman Catholic. And a lot of times he would invite priests to come to the house, and then he would spend time with priests. So I was exposed to a lot of what we say Catholicism and holy men when I was young, but it didn't really inspire me so much. But then when I went to the service, I joined the army, and then I was in the army for almost 4 years. And then I had a near-death experience. I spent 18 months in Vietnam. So I had a near-death experience where we were on a helicopter and it crashed. And while it was crashing, I started to remember God, which surprised and shocked me. From that point on, after that experience, I started to reevaluate my relationship with God. And that made me, again, more interested in religion and spiritual life. And when I came out, that's when I started to explore spirituality. But I wasn't so much interested in the modern day religions that was going on. So I started looking towards Eastern religions. There was a fascination with that. And people were talking about vegetarianism and yoga. It was just becoming in vogue at the time. And so I was thinking, where should I go to really, accelerate my interest? And I remember there was one place in America called Denver, Colorado. But then there was another place nearby called Boulder, Colorado. And that was 1972. So I did a little research and I found Boulder, Colorado was like a mecca for all these Eastern yogis that were coming to the West and starting their different ashrams. And so I wound up in Denver for a while, and that's how I actually came in contact with the Hare Krishna movement. And from then, I didn't exactly gravitate quickly. In fact, I was a little bit critical of the movement and what their philosophy was. And then I started to ask questions, and I was amazed by the answers I was getting. And one question led to another question and another question. And the questions I was looking for in life became more and more clear. And then I started to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and it was immediate happiness when I started to chant. Then I started to feel I was actually getting an experience. There was no more philosophy or just thinking this way or that way. It was actually an experience. And this led to me reading more books and then associating with the devotees more and more. But I didn't join in Denver. I was living in New Jersey at the time. And I came back and I actually started to frequent the New York temple. And that really, really connected me more and more with the spiritual process. First time I walked into the New York temple, I still was inclined to politics and social movements. And the first day I walk in, there is Jayadvaita Maharaj giving a class about the futilities of politics. So that was my first lecture I ever heard. I was thinking, how is this happening? And then later, of course, I still understood that this was some introduction that I was getting to Krishna consciousness. And then I was starting to frequent the temple regularly, going to the Sunday feast, and living in New Jersey, traveling back and forth from Brooklyn to New Jersey. And finally, I was living in Paterson, New Jersey, which wasn't too far from New York City. And finally, devotees started to encourage me to spend time in the temple, and that's when I did. And then that became something that I got more and more involved with Krishna consciousness. But then something happened. I thought, maybe this life is not for me. So I went back to my home in New Jersey. My father had just passed away a year before. He left his body at the age of 58. He was quite young. And so I went back to stay with my mother and my sister. So I was there. And then one night I had a really powerful dream, and my father appeared to me in the dream and basically told me, don't stay here, get out of here, go back to the temple. It was clear, it was direct. It wasn't just a dream, it was an experience. So my father came again, and after he had departed in my dream, and based on that dream, the next day I practically packed my bags and went back to the temple. Then I became more and more serious.
Can you speak more about this? I'm noticing how you're using the word experience. I feel like this is important for us, Srikala and me, but also our listeners to understand what's the significance of having an experience in contrast to just reading about it or having an idea or concept. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Everything you read, if it doesn't come to some kind of an experience, then it's just theory. It doesn't really inspire you to actually make a leap of faith towards what you're trying to understand through reading. So the experience came that when I was practicing Krishna consciousness, especially chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, I started to feel very happy. I started reading the books started to make sense. And then, of course, a lot of my support, which helped to bring about an experience, was from the devotees I met in the temple. I met some wonderful devotees who went out of their way to make sure that I got everything I needed to learn more about Krishna consciousness. So an experience is more like taking the philosophy to a level of realization where it doesn't just, and I guess you can use an analogy. It's the difference between walking into a restaurant and just reading the menu as opposed to actually ordering and tasting the food. Theory is nice, but it's only a direction. If you don't get an experience in life or don't get some realization about the theories you're reading, then it doesn't stay with you. Life is experience. So I was getting some really significant religious experiences through the practice. In other words, I was becoming happy.
Is creating or having experience, is that something that just happens to us, or is there something that we can do to order off the menu and actually put the food in our mouth when it comes to, I mean, I think when it comes to anything, but particularly when it comes to spiritual life?
Well, the more open you are to whatever you're doing, the more likely you are to have an experience. Um, I was analytic and a little bit what we say, not critical, but critically analytic to see exactly if this is what I really wanted. But what really helped to give me the experience is that every question that I had, and every question that came up and that I asked was answered in such an amazing way that I thought, oh, I have never heard anything like this before. It makes complete sense.
Mm.
So it was like, it was intuitive. It started to ring a bell on the intuitive level. Yeah, this is actually correct. I'm feeling happy. This knowledge makes sense. I could see the devotees who were practicing, they were also showing symptoms of happiness, and they were enthusiastic to try to share this with others. So that was a big part of becoming more and more connected. It was how much the devotees were actually experiencing what they were teaching and what they were practicing. Yeah?
Mm.
I could see it in their lives.
It's something that really stands out to me, actually, as I hear you describe it. I think actually Chandrasekhar Swami was the first person that I heard speak about this, and then I've heard multiple people say it, and now hearing you say it, there is something about Bhakti, about the teachings that we have from Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and these ancient scriptures that really seem to answer every question, and it's very different from what at least I experienced in the Western offerings that I had around religion growing up as a child, where it really felt like I was being asked to just close my eyes and have faith, and I didn't understand, and when I didn't understand, I was basically told, like, you're not supposed to understand, just follow the instruction. And I have had the opposite experience in the Hare Krishna movement, and frankly with every spiritual teaching that comes out of India. It's much more like, go ahead, bring your skepticism. We have an answer for everything.
Yeah, because when you want to lead a child, you can't sometimes reason with a child about why the child should be like this or do like this. You just tell, you kind of like being in the position of guiding the child. You tell the child to just simple to obey. But you can't do that with adults. Adults want answers. They want understanding. They don't want to be told just to keep quiet and have faith. It's quite anti-intellectual, and it just doesn't work with adults. So then generally, even people who may succumb to that idea, after a while, they start to question everything then. Yeah. When you're convinced by your intelligence, you're convinced.
Mm-hmm. Maharaj, you said that you were into politics, and now I'm curious where you are now. Are you completely outside of that dimension? Do you not even look? Do you know about Trump or what's happening? Do you think about it?
It's interesting because when I was practicing Krishna consciousness for many decades, I never even went on the news channel. So I was pretty much completely out of touch with what was happening. But ever since Trump became president, I started to find interest again. Because I found this person is quite, what we say, revolutionary. And he's a lot different than a lot of other people who take office. So, and then he was shaking everybody up. So I gained a little bit of curiosity about what's happening, but not so much an active interest.
Mm-hmm.
Just some curiosity to see how people were accepting him and how he was leading. So it was just curious. I was curious. I didn't really take any kind of political stance one way or the other. It was just more just to see what was happening. That's all.
It's amazing that the person that's causing such a nuisance is also causing everyone to pay attention more. You know, people that don't usually ever pay attention are now like looking into like, okay, what's actually going on in this?
Well, now I guess the time is that people are looking for answers. With this coronavirus, there's a lot of speculation on what's going to happen, what is my position, can I go back to normal life, what do I do now, how do I live my life in this somewhat restricted way. So people are looking for answers. I saw one doctor, he pretty much came on, he was speaking about what causes, what we say, a lot of the problems with the earth, such as pollution, air pollution, water pollution, food pollution, mind pollution, all the pollutions that's going on. And basically he said, well, he summed everything up by describing a little bit of the history, and basically he said, there's no other choice right now than to become spiritual. We can't live a normal human life. It's just not possible. He kind of concluded his statement with that spirituality is only the only direction, at least at the present time. He's seeing that this is where we can make progress in life.
Yes.
And he's not a spiritual person, at least he didn't come out as one. He's just a doctor who is trying to give some understanding of what's happening in the general sense with the earth.
I think that's a perfect segue back to this topic of success, which again is it's a strange word even for me to be bringing up with you, but I'm like, yeah, that edge is really important. So my question now is how do you see or define success now for yourself, for the devotees, for people during this time of the coronavirus? Like how do you frame that today?
Well, I'm fixed in my life. I've dedicated my life to Krishna consciousness, to worshiping God according to the Vedic tradition. But I see success within that context as being able to share this knowledge with others, and to see how I can apply this knowledge to people in a general sense who are struggling with their material problems. So I do a lot of counseling with people who struggle on the day-to-day life of living in the world, using spiritual principles as a means to understand how they can approach the problem and maybe find solutions. So I guess I'm a spiritual coach.
No doubt.
Nice. Yeah.
So I try to do it from that perspective. So I can see my life becomes more fuller the more opportunities I have to impact others, where they can make a difference, they can change their life and make a difference for the better. I find myself, of course, I still study the books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and chant, and I'm reading and I have some interest, but most of my focus is on outward and trying to reach others. And so even on this coronavirus, sometimes we use a little catchword, we call it Karuna. Karuna means compassion. So we said that actually that it's giving me and a lot of other people a chance to look deeper into their own spiritual life. And now, more than ever, I've been talking about Krishna consciousness than I have ever before. I'm giving 2 talks every day. And today is with you. Right now is my 3rd one today.
Wow.
So for me, it's inspiring to be able to share my experiences in devotional life and try to inspire others. And when I see their inspiration, it inspires me more to keep going.
Yes. I'm so grateful that one of the opportunities that's arising during this time is that you and other spiritual leaders are teaching in a way that makes the teachings more available just because they're online, where normally you'd have enough devotees in the room. You don't necessarily need, you wouldn't have necessarily needed to think about reaching a broader audience. That's not what motivated it. But now that you're offering your teachings online anyway, that Shri and I can join while you're in Croatia and we're in Los Angeles, that's very, very special.
Yeah, it's the benefit of the media. So we, in that sense, our spiritual master said, we are not against technology, we're just against the misuse of technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Do you recommend, like, is it important that people take time to let's say retreat from the world, to not watch the news, to just focus on study, and then later go back out and pay attention to the news again and start to teach and share with others? Or is it something that you can do all at once?
That's part of life. We live in a world today where we don't have that, what we say, understanding of the necessity of that. We're so busy doing so many things, and we have so many plans. So the downtime in life is actually normal. In a very simplified agrarian society, which was basically how the Vedic culture developed and started, people wouldn't work the whole year. Most people were agriculturalists. And so they would spend 4 months a year working on agriculture, and the rest of the year they would be doing other things. And a lot of times they would just be spending time with family, friends, and practicing spirituality, or just being with others. So our life is quite frantic now. In fact, it's actually mad. And so we don't have that. And so to settle down, and my experience with people nowadays, they find it hard to slow down. They find it's almost unnatural. But it's needed for both for the mind, the body, to develop aesthetic and moral principles, and just to go deeper into spirituality and relationships. What this coronavirus is doing is actually helping people develop better relationships. Although it's more limited, it's becoming more, what we say, more fuller.
Mm.
People are spending, even with the time they're spending, very few, they're spending more quality time with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And people are telling me that I have more time with my friends and family now than I ever did before. And it's nice. They're renewing their relationships with others.
Yes.
I love that you said it was in Vedic, in the old Vedic times, it was normal to take 4 months off and just kind of focus inwardly. And now it's almost like Mother Earth is forcing us to take 4 months off. It's like, okay.
The seasons also tell you how to live. Spring means to plan, summer means to act, fall means to reap, and winter means to slow down. But we're on a fast pace throughout the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
So nature teaches us how to live, but we don't follow nature, and therefore we work outside of nature, and then we somehow cause problems for ourselves and for others, because we're living against nature's natural rhythm for the human being to live. And therefore we have so many psychological and so many other forms of problems, personal problems, social problems, because people don't know how to live. They don't know how to take time for God, take time for each other, take time for themselves. They're just busy doing things or building up their, what we say, careers, or trying to accumulate more money, whatever. And society is pushing people in that direction. So they're even if they want to slow down, they find themselves being drifted by the tide that they're in. So this coronavirus is kind of slowing everybody down and helping us reflect about what is life and what do I really want to do with my life now.
I love hearing you speak about this. I know it's a impossible question, but still, if you could recommend just one thing to people listening who relate to what you're describing of feeling disconnected, of feeling that the life that they're living now is mad, what would you suggest? Where should they start?
Well, I can think of two things. I can think of something that is personal, and I can think something that is a little extended. The extended thing is to the people to come together, even if they have to do it over the media, or if they can come in small groups of 2 and 3 or 4, and read scripture and talk about scripture. Read the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. It's full of philosophy, full of practical knowledge. It's full of things that we can understand in our relationship with each other and with God. Sit together, read, discuss it, and try to learn from that discussion and being an inspiration for others. And the second thing is, on an individual level, we can go into more prayer. Prayer not only is a way to commune with God, but it's also a way to connect with our own natural self. It causes us to be more ourselves. And when we're in a prayerful mood, we're actually in a more peaceful and a more, what we say, natural state of consciousness. So, of course, the main prayer of ours is to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And by praying, chanting, and going deeper, we can find our connection with the Lord, and we can find our connection with ourselves more. If we take a little time, and it takes a little patience, once we start it, it'll actually have an experience right away, but the deeper experience will come when we continue to do individual prayer.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. You're very good at answering these impossible questions. If people want to find more about you, if they want to read your books or study with you or come to one of these deep dives with you, another workshop with you, what's the best way for people to find you?
Well, I'm told I have a Facebook, but I don't really read it. My disciples manage my Facebook for me, but I'm on Facebook. So
Okay,
I guess
great.
you'd be looking up my name on Facebook. I'm on other ways to connect. Also, of course, let's see.
You have a website too. Is it,
Yes, I have a website. Yeah, I think it's cmswami.com, cm.swami.org. It's one of them. Yeah, I have a website that's nicely managed by one devotee in London. I have authored 3 books, and two of the books are about our work inside of prisons, how to reach inmates with this message of Krishna consciousness. It's interesting that just when this coronavirus hit, we were doing amazing amount of prison programs in London, one after another, and it was just snowballing, and then all of a sudden we had to slow down. And we were bringing books into the inmates, and the inmates were really finding we would speak, give classes, discuss Krishna consciousness, and do a little prayer meeting with the inmates together. And the feedback we got was always quite positive. And we left a lot of our books there, Prabhupada's books and Bhagavad Gita and others. But I also have 2 books, both all about what we do inside of jails. The first book is called Holy Jail. It was published in 2010. And the second was called Forbidden Voices. That came out in 2018. And so those books are available on Amazon. And of course, people can contact me directly, and I can also arrange for books to be sent to different places. We have some people who are in America who are active in prison preaching, and we can connect with them and also get some of my books through that avenue also.
Mm.
And then
So amazing.
So I have one more book. It's called Daily Drops. That are just little snippets of spiritual statements, almost like aphorisms. I mean, just statements of wisdom.
Mm.
I try to put that on my conference, on my email conference. We have a conference called Candramauli Swami, googlegroups.com, and then I publish that every day. And then we turned it into a book after a few years of the different.
Oh.
That's cool.
We'll have to do another interview to talk more about you. There's so much more now I want to ask you about. So we'll just name that. We're going to pause here shortly, but that we'll have to talk more about this. The prison work, I think there's just so much more that people are going to want to hear from about all the different projects.
Yeah, especially because people are in a prison right now. So it's so relevant. Everyone's stuck in their house. So they're having that experience of being in a prison. So what you've done previously is so relevant to right now.
It's all of a sudden life has become a big restriction, and so it's similar to prison life. And for many, they're suffering tremendously because everything they've done has come to a halt, or everything they've known has come to a halt. So now we recommend that people start looking inwardly, because we always say that if you want to find happiness outward, you have to find happiness inward first. When you find it within yourself, then you can find it outside. But if you're looking for it outside, you may not find it, because happiness is an affair of the heart, and it takes its place within the mind when the heart becomes satisfied. So peace, happiness is something that we need to find in ourselves in order for us to live life. Because if we're doing so many things, it doesn't mean we're happy. But even if we're doing less things, and if we're feeling happy inside, everything we do has meaning, it has value. So it's about finding that peace and happiness within, through going within, through a process of spiritual practice.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, Maharaj. It's such an honor to be with you. It's so nourishing to have time with you at this time, and to be able to continue to learn.
I'm so happy to be with both of you. You made my day, actually.
Amazing.
Thank you all for watching. We will include all of those resources in the show notes. So if you want to dive deeper into our beautiful teacher's work, you will have all the ways to do that. And please make sure to comment in the video comments. Let us know what lands, what questions you still have. I read every single one of those comments and respond personally. And if there's anything that needs Maharaj's attention, I will make sure to share it with him. So thank you, Sri Kala, for being here. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. Be well, be healthy, be happy.
Thank you. That was what I was going to say.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Everything you want is already here.